Just to be clear, Jordan leaned forward with a tone full of cockiness. We want you to know right now, so there's no confusion later. Everything is going to us. His words hit me like a punch in the gut. And suddenly, the homemade pasta, bake on my plate, the very one Mom had promised would lure me home, felt like heavy lead weighing me down. For a moment, the dining room fell silent, except for the distant sound of cars on the nearby street. My heart was pounding as I looked across the polished wooden table at Jordan and Bianca, my younger twin siblings. Both of them were grinning, their eyes shining with smug satisfaction. "Excuse me," I managed to say, even though my voice was shaking despite my best efforts to sound steady. "What do you mean, everything?" came the reply, exactly as he'd said. "Alex, Linda," Mom interjected sharply, her smile replaced by a look of defiance. "Your father and I have decided to finalize our will, and we wanted you to hear it straight from us. The house, the lake cottage, everything is going to Jordan and Bianca." I turned toward Dad, hoping to catch a hint of regret or that this was just a horrible joke. But his eyes stayed fixed on the cutlery, avoiding any eye contact. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever before he finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "Alex, you have to understand our reasoning," Dad said slowly as he folded his hands. "You've done exceptionally well for yourself. Linda and I are proud of the career and success you've built. Jordan and Bianca, on the other hand, are still trying to find their way. They need more support." I blinked hard, fighting back the sting of tears. Support. For years, I had quietly taken on the family's financial burdens, believing it was my duty as the oldest. I had covered the house payments, Jordan's never-ending tuition fees, Bianca's whims and costly hobbies, all without complaint. And apparently, none of that mattered. My heart ached as I looked at my parents' faces. Their expressions hardened against me. It felt like a betrayal sharper than anything I had ever imagined. "So this is my reward for spending the last 4 years paying your mortgage?" I demanded, my voice low but firm as I mentioned the tuition fees and the $30,000 I'd spent renovating that lake cottage last summer. "You're leaving me nothing because I made something of myself?" Linda sighed dramatically, shaking her head. "This is exactly why we didn't want to tell you," she said. "You always bring it back to money, Alex. It's never about family with you." My cheeks burned with anger, and I clenched my fists under the table. "For me, it's always been about family," I shot back. "Every sacrifice I made was out of love." "Because you asked for help?" Mom replied. "Because you said family sticks together?" Jordan scoffed, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms with an air of superiority. "You're acting like some martyr. Nobody forced you to help. You just loved playing the hero." Bianca laughed softly, twirling a lock of her hair around her finger, her eyes narrowing in amusement. "Maybe you thought that if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would finally love you, as much as they love us?" Her cutting words reopened an old wound I had spent years ignoring. My parents said nothing, and I didn't even try to defend myself. Their silence was louder than any words could be. They'd always favored Jordan and Bianca, shielding them and making excuses for every irresponsible choice they made. Yet here I was, after years of sacrifice, being painted as greedy and selfish. Anger flared inside me, burning away the last of my patience. "You're right, Jordan," I finally said, forcing my voice to stay even. "No one forced me, but from now on, I'm not going to let anyone guilt me into being this family's ATM. I'm done." I pushed my chair back and stood up abruptly, ignoring the shocked looks on their faces for a moment. The smell of tomato sauce and garlic lingered in the air, a bitter reminder of what I had hoped would be a comforting family dinner. Instead, I'd been ambushed, humiliated, and rejected in the very home I'd helped pay for. As I grabbed my coat from the hallway, the front door slammed shut behind me with a definitive thud, cutting me off from the voices inside, voices that no longer mattered. Outside, the cool Portland air hit me hard, clearing my head a bit, but my heart still felt raw and full of disbelief. My own family had used me, discarded me, and left me feeling worthless. I got into my car and slammed the door shut, gripping the wheel with trembling hands as tears finally streamed down my face. On that lonely drive back to my downtown apartment, memories flooded in. Each financial sacrifice, each canceled vacation. Every night. I had spent an entire week balancing spreadsheets and payments just to keep them comfortable. All done in silence without any complaint, driven by a misguided sense of love and duty. How naive I had been, believing that my efforts were appreciated and valued. At home, my apartment suddenly felt unfamiliar, as if everything around me was tainted by this harsh revelation. I poured myself a generous glass of Cabernet, the expensive bottle I'd saved for special occasions. Somehow, tonight's bitter lesson seemed fitting. I settled onto my couch and opened my banking app. There it was, recurring monthly payments of $1,800 labeled parents, mortgage, and another $600 for their utility bills. Without a second thought, I canceled both. A quiet defiance bubbled up inside me as I watched the confirmation messages pop up. As the night wore on, I replayed that dinner conversation over and over, my anger slowly giving way to a deep sadness. The rejection wasn't just about money, it was emotional, a lifetime of feeling discarded. Being treated as second best was now on full display. But even amid the pain, something new was stirring inside me, a sense of freedom and a realization that my worth wasn't defined by their approval. It was time to take control of my own life, free from expectations and obligations that had become nothing more than chains around my spirit. I knew my parents, Jordan and Bianca, wouldn't let this slide quietly. There would be calls, arguments, maybe even retaliation. But tonight marked a turning point. No matter how hard they pushed back, I silently vowed that I was done being their victim, done accepting disrespect just because I felt obligated. From that moment on, my life belonged only to me. And as I finished the last drop of wine, I couldn't help but smile bitterly into the dark. They had invited me home to announce that everything was going to Jordan and Bianca, but in a twisted way, they'd given me something far more valuable. That night, freedom. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay staring at the dark ceiling of my apartment, my mind caught in an endless loop of disbelief, hurt, and anger. Outside, the city lights blinked through my curtains, indifferent to the storm inside me. Every time I closed my eyes, I relived those humiliating moments at the dinner table. The smug look on Jordan's face, the sneering contempt in my siblings' eyes, and worst of all, the silent rejection from my parents. Their silence hurt more than any harsh words they could have thrown at me. By the time morning came, I was completely drained of tears. I forced myself out of bed, made a strong cup of coffee, and sat at my kitchen table. The morning news murmured in the background, but I wasn't really listening. Instead, memories from every corner of my life pressed in on me. Was I blind all these years? Or had I just chosen to ignore the signs because I desperately wanted to believe my family valued me for more than just the money I provided? Suddenly, my phone buzzed, vibrating harshly on the table. It was Mom. My stomach twisted in knots, and I let the call go to voicemail, unable or unwilling to listen to her voice. Already? I thought. A minute later, the voicemail notification flashed impatiently. I played it. "Alex, please stop being so dramatic," her voice said, filled with that all-too-familiar mix of exasperation and guilt. "Call me back. You know, family isn't supposed to treat each other like this." I let out a hollow laugh. Family, her favorite tool for emotional manipulation. Family only mattered when it served their needs. I deleted the message and put my phone aside, determined not to break down under her usual guilt trips. In the following days, the calls kept coming. First from Mom, then Dad, and eventually from Jordan and Bianca, each taking turns with condescending lectures and sarcastic pleas. Yet none of their voices showed even a hint of remorse, only growing irritation that their financial lifeline had suddenly been cut off. Finally, after a particularly bitter call from Bianca accusing me of being selfish and jealous, I blocked all of them. For the first time in years, a fragile sense of peace settled over me, though it was tinged with a dull, persistent ache. Unsure if the feeling would ever truly disappear, I threw myself into work to distract myself. Foster Construction's latest project, a modern medical office complex in Sacramento, demanded all of my attention. Meetings, blueprints, and client walkthroughs, things I used to handle with ease, now felt like desperate escapes from the painful reality waiting for me outside office hours. I started working longer days, even volunteering for extra travel, anything to avoid facing the emptiness of my suddenly quiet evenings. 3 weeks went by without any contact from my family, and I started to hope that maybe they had finally accepted my decision and moved on. But deep down, I knew better. It was a Friday afternoon when I received a text that sent a shiver down my spine. Family meeting tonight. Alex, you owe it to us to be there. My heart rate spiked as I stared at that message, disbelief clashing with outrage. I didn't owe them anything, not anymore, though a part of me, perhaps out of misguided hope for reconciliation, was curious. Not for me. Before I could overthink it, I replied with just one word. Fine. Pulling into my parents' driveway that evening felt surreal. Jordan's flashy motorcycle and Bianca's bright blue car were already there, parked side by side like symbols of entitlement. A sense of dread churned inside me as I approached the now unfamiliar front door that once felt like home, but now resembled an enemy's fortress. Mom opened the door with a forced smile that barely hid her irritation. Alex, I'm glad you decided to come, she said stiffly, ushering me into the house I once called home. Fiona's here too. My Aunt Fiona sat quietly in the living room corner, her eyes warm with sympathy, yet cautious. Her presence surprised me. She rarely got involved in family drama. I sat down across from her, my heart racing as my siblings entered the room, glaring openly. Dad cleared his throat. We called this meeting to set things straight. Alex, he began firmly, Linda and I thought you would see reason by now. Clearly, we were wrong. I bit back a sharp reply, clenching my fists in frustration. See? Reason? My voice trembled as I said, you cut me out completely after everything I did for you, all those mortgage payments and tuition checks. And now you expect me to see reason? Mom snapped, rolling her eyes. Sure, you helped out, but it was always your duty as the eldest. Jordan and Bianca need stability. It's not our fault you chose work over family, Dad continued. A bitter laugh escaped me. I chose work over family, I echoed, incredulously. I built my career because you needed my money. I skipped vacations, friendships, and relationships, all so you could keep up the illusion of security. Cut the drama, Jordan scoffed. Nobody asked for your pity or charity. Exactly, Bianca sneered. Maybe if you weren't so busy playing the family savior, you'd have a life of your own by now. My face flushed with humiliation as I felt the sting of their words. Aunt Fiona shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. The silence was as loud as any scream. My parents stayed silent, their faces set in stone, eyes turned away from me once more. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping harshly on the hardwood floor. You know what? You're right. It was my mistake to believe I mattered here. I won't make that mistake again. As I reached the door, Dad's voice cut sharply behind me. If you walk out now, Alex, don't expect to be welcomed back. I paused, my hand tightly gripping the doorknob. A lifetime of pent-up anger finally boiled over. That's fine, I said coldly, my voice trembling with controlled fury. I never felt welcome here anyway. Outside, beneath the cold stars, tears tracked down my cheeks. Every step toward my car felt heavier, the realization sinking in. My family never truly valued me. I was just convenient, disposable, a backup plan. I locked my apartment door firmly behind me, determined never to let them hurt me again. I sat alone in the dark, the silence wrapping around me like a protective blanket. A sudden gentle knock on my door startled me, sending adrenaline through my veins. I cautiously looked through the peephole and saw Aunt Fiona standing there, worry clearly written on her face. I opened the door and let her in without a word. She immediately wrapped me in a warm embrace, her comfort and care evident. I'm sorry, Alex, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "They're all wrong. You deserve so much better," she said, and her words cracked something inside me. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over as she held me tight, letting me release years of bottled-up pain and bitterness. After a long, quiet moment, she spoke again, her voice filled with conviction. "They'll never admit it, but they're scared. Scared of losing control, scared of facing their own mistakes. For years, the recurring charges, $1,800 for the mortgage, $600 for utilities, and countless transfers simply marked as family help, stared at me like silent accusations. My cursor hovered over the cancel button as my breathing grew shallow, despite the anger and humiliation coursing through me. Guilt twisted in my gut, whispering old lies about duty and responsibility. I hesitated, the sound of Mom's voice, echoing in my head. "Family sticks together, Alex. Family makes sacrifices." But tonight had stripped away every illusion. Their betrayal, so dismissive and cold, had revealed the hard truth. I was nothing more than their financial convenience. I closed my eyes tightly, Jordan's mocking grin flashing in my memory, and with one final decisive click, I canceled the mortgage payment. Another click stopped the utility bill transfer. Relief flooded through me, so intense it took my breath away. For the first time in years, I was no longer their lifeline. The chains that had bound me were finally broken. Exhaustion soon overtook me, and when I woke up on the couch the next morning, the skyline of Portland was bathed in soft hues of lavender and gold. My phone buzzed insistently, yanking me from sleep. A wave of dread hit me as I saw Mom's name on the screen. I took a steadying breath before answering. "Alex, what have you done?" she demanded, barely pausing for greetings. Her voice trembled with anger. "The bank called. They're threatening foreclosure. You had no right." I interrupted, my tone unexpectedly calm. "Mom, I paid your mortgage, voluntarily and early, but after everything that happened, I'm done being your financial crutch." "You're our daughter," she shrieked. "You owe us respect." "I owe you nothing," I shot back sharply, my anger flaring again. "Respect isn't a one-way street. You made your choice. Now I've made mine." Mom tried to continue, desperation seeping into her voice, but I cut her off firmly. "I'm sorry you're upset, Mom, but I can't do this anymore. Goodbye." I hung up quickly, my hands still trembling. The calls didn't stop. Dad, Bianca, even distant relatives, all trying to manipulate, guilt trip, or shame me back into submission. In time, I silenced my phone, feeling a strange sense of empowerment in my quiet rebellion. Weeks passed, and slowly life began to regain its balance. Work became more than just a distraction. It felt genuinely fulfilling again. I even booked that trip to Italy I had dreamed about for years, finally relishing the freedom to spend my hard-earned money on myself. A new sense of independence filled my days, though at night loneliness sometimes crept in, a harsh reminder of the family ties that had been severed. Then came the 3-day trip to Sacramento for final inspections at our new medical complex project. The timing was perfect, a welcome escape from the lingering sadness and family drama. Returning late on a Friday evening, tired and lugging my bags, I noticed something was wrong as I neared my apartment door. The closer I got, the more obvious it became. Thick, hardened foam was covering the entire doorframe in a grotesque display. My stomach dropped. My apartment had been completely sealed shut, and my heart pounded in terror. I reached out to touch the foam. It was dry, rock solid, sprayed deliberately into every crack and crevice to keep me out. Panic surged, and soon anger replaced it. There was only one person I could blame for such a petty act of sabotage: Jordan. I immediately called building management and paced nervously in the hallway as I waited. After what felt like forever, a locksmith finally arrived, shaking his head in sympathy at the extensive damage. He carefully chipped away at the hardened foam, commenting on how deliberate the vandalism was. "Someone really didn't want you inside," he said in a low, grim tone. My blood boiled as I imagined Jordan, with his smug satisfaction, deliberately spraying my door shut as punishment for daring to stand up for myself. By the time the locksmith finished, it was nearly midnight. Adrenaline kept me awake, my anger too intense for sleep. Sitting down at my computer, I remembered the security camera in the hallway. My heart racing, I pulled up the footage and watched anxiously until a familiar figure appeared. There was Jordan, wearing a baseball cap low over his eyes and a hoodie that hid most of his face. But it was definitely him. My stomach churned as I saw him systematically vandalize my door, his expression one of glee and malice. The betrayal felt as raw as if it had just happened. With trembling hands, I saved the video, my rage turning into cold determination. I hesitated for a moment. This was my own brother. Could I really hand him over to the police? But this wasn't just a family squabble anymore. Jordan had crossed the line from being selfish to committing a real crime. I called Aunt Fiona, desperate for guidance. "Alex," her voice was gentle yet firm, "if you don't hold Jordan accountable now, he'll never learn. Protecting him isn't kindness, it's enabling." Her words gave me the strength I needed. The next morning, I filed a police report and turned in the footage as evidence. The fallout was immediate. My family's outrage exploded into a barrage of furious voicemails calling me vindictive, heartless, a traitor. Yet behind their anger was a dawning realization that I meant business. No longer could they control me. Jordan now faced real charges, unless he made restitution. Dad called once more, his voice brittle with forced calm. "What will it take, Alex, for you to drop the charges?" I replied without hesitation, $3,000. Spelling it out in full, the exact cost of the repairs. "That's extortion," he barked indignantly. "No," I answered coolly, surprising even myself with the strength in my voice. "Jordan vandalized my home. Either he pays up or he faces the charges." He abruptly hung up. The next morning, I saw a bank transfer for exactly $3,000 appear in my account, labeled bitterly as the final payment. Despite the resentment behind it, I felt a surge of victory. Not because of the money, but because, for once, I had forced them to face the consequences of their actions. Jordan's petty act of vandalism hadn't broken me. Instead, it solidified my newfound independence. No longer weighed down by their selfish demands, I began rebuilding my life on my own terms. Standing alone in my now repaired doorway, I took a deep breath, savoring the bittersweet taste of victory. Yes, my family had betrayed me and pushed me to the edge, but in doing so, they had unwittingly set me free. Now, at last, I could live a life where I answered only to myself. After Jordan's act, the silence from my family was almost deafening. Days turned into weeks without any contact. No angry messages, no desperate pleas. At first, that silence felt like a relief, but soon it became a constant, heavy reminder of what I had lost. My parents had clearly picked sides, and once again, I wasn't the one they chose. Then the rumors began. Late one evening, Aunt Fiona called with urgency in her voice. "Alex, your mom's been talking. She's telling everyone that you abandoned us, that you're trying to make your parents homeless." My heart sank. "That's ridiculous," I whispered, clenching my phone tighter. "They left me no choice." "I know," Aunt Fiona soothed gently, "but others don't see it that way. They think you're selfish, that you stopped helping your family out of greed." The accusation stung deeply. My parents were rewriting our history, painting me as the villain. All those years of sacrifice, canceled vacations, delayed personal dreams, were being erased as if they meant nothing. I paced my apartment, my anguish giving way to a fierce need to speak up for myself. After years of silent obedience, I was done letting others define my story. I sat down at my laptop and started typing a long Facebook post. I laid everything out: the monthly mortgage payments, Jordan's constant tuition fees and irresponsibility, Bianca's endless demands, and even the damage Jordan had done. Every sacrifice, every dollar of silent resentment flowed out onto the screen. My hands trembled as I clicked post, releasing years of bottled-up pain into the open. Within minutes, comments began pouring in, some expressing shock and sympathy, horrified that I had been taken advantage of for so long, while others scolded me for airing private family matters in public. Then came Mom's furious voicemail. "How dare you humiliate us like this? You have no right." That outrage stirred something primal inside me. "I have no right," I shot back angrily when I called her immediately, "because you lied to everyone. After everything I've done, you labeled me selfish, a villain, just to save face. You abandoned us," she hissed bitterly, "all because we chose to help Jordan and Bianca when they needed it most." "No," I corrected, my voice trembling. "You abandoned me the moment you decided my efforts meant nothing. You taught Jordan and Bianca that entitlement was okay, and now you're paying the price." "You've destroyed our family," she whispered coldly. "No," I replied softly. "You did that yourself." I hung up, my heart pounding, tears blurring my vision. Later, as I composed another detailed post online, I laid out every canceled vacation, every dollar of sacrifice, and quiet resentment. My hands shook as I released years of hurt for everyone to see. Within minutes, comments flooded in, some shocked and sympathetic, others critical for airing our family's secrets. Then Mom called again, furious. "How dare you embarrass us like this? You have no right." Her words provoked a primal reaction in me. "I have no right," I retorted, calling her back immediately. "You lied to everyone. After all I did, you called me selfish, a villain, just to cover your own shame." "You abandoned us," she snapped bitterly. "You did that the moment you decided your efforts meant nothing. You taught Jordan and Bianca to expect handouts, and now you're facing the consequences." "You ruined our family," she whispered. "No," I answered softly. "You ruined it yourself." I hung up, my heart hammering, tears blurring my vision. The guilt twisted inside me as I wondered if I had truly destroyed my family by standing up for myself. But I knew I had to demand respect. Later that evening, Aunt Fiona knocked on my door, and when I opened it, she wrapped me in a warm, reassuring hug. "Your post changed everything," she said quietly. As some family members finally began to see the truth, she added, "Your mom hid all your contributions for years. They had no idea." I sighed deeply, a mix of relief and sorrow swirling inside me. "Does it matter anymore?" I asked softly. "Yes," Aunt Fiona insisted, holding my hand. "Your voice matters. You deserve recognition for everything you've done. Your parents chose dishonesty, but that doesn't mean you have to live under their shadow." Her words resonated, planting seeds of strength in my battered heart. Slowly, the sharp pain of betrayal softened, replaced by a cautious hope. I was no longer hiding or silent. The truth was painful and raw, but it was finally mine. A few days later, I received a short, bitter text from Bianca. "Thanks a lot. Everyone hates us now. I hope you're proud." I stared at the message, feeling strangely detached. After years of chasing approval and desperately seeking their acceptance, I realized that their approval had never been genuine. It always came with strings attached. I replied calmly, "I'm done apologizing for your choices. Maybe now you'll learn some responsibility." She never replied. In time, the harsh judgments from distant relatives began to fade. My parents struggled financially without my help, forced into part-time jobs and now facing debts they had long ignored. Jordan continued his pattern of irresponsibility, refusing to take responsibility, while Bianca drifted on, angry yet unwilling to change. Meanwhile, my own life began to flourish. My decisions were finally my own. I was free, not just financially, but emotionally. I had faced the harsh truth, endured my family's betrayal, and discovered a strength I never knew I had. Even though my parents had thought leaving me nothing in their will would break me, they had accidentally given me the greatest gift of all, the courage to choose myself. 6 months went by, and the toxic shadow of my family gradually lifted. from my daily life. It wasn't easy at first. Silence haunted me like a ghost, reminding me of every lost connection and broken bond. But slowly, the raw edges of betrayal softened, replaced by a bittersweet realization that I had finally broken free. I threw myself into my career, eventually earning a promotion that came with a corner office and a salary I had only ever dreamed about. For the very first time, my paycheck was mine alone. No mortgage payments draining my financial security, no frantic late-night transfers to cover debts or Bianca's impulsive spending. Every dollar I earned represented my freedom, proof that choosing myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. With this newfound financial independence, I booked a 2-week trip to Italy, a journey I had postponed for far too long because of guilt over spending money on myself. Standing on a balcony overlooking Florence's glowing skyline at sunset, I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation, joy unburdened by obligations or guilt. Back home, I joined a hiking club and finally reclaimed the weekends I'd lost to family drama. On one of these hikes, I met someone special, Alex, whose warm smile and genuine conversation eased the lingering wounds in my heart. His quiet support reminded me that I was worthy of unconditional love. Months passed peacefully, until one chilly November evening when there was an unexpected knock on my door. I opened it to find Aunt Fiona wearing her favorite sweater and holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. Without a word, she stepped inside and hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you, Alex," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "You deserve all the happiness in the world," she added softly. "Your parents are still blaming you for everything. They won't change, Alex, but you've grown stronger. You chose yourself, and that's true courage." I admitted quietly. "I still think about them, not because I regret leaving, but because it hurts to know they never really loved me the way I loved them." Aunt Fiona squeezed my hand gently. "Sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about those who truly see your worth." Her words filled a lingering emptiness. As we talked deep into the night, sharing stories and laughs, I finally understood that family isn't defined solely by blood, but by those who genuinely care about and respect you. In the weeks that followed, whispers from distant relatives painted a grim picture of my parents' situation. Mom was working, the early shift at a diner, exhaustion etched on her face, while Dad had taken a physically demanding job at the local hardware store, working far more than what was healthy for him. Jordan had quit his other job, still refusing to take responsibility, and Bianca was stuck in her endless fantasy of launching an online influencer career that was never going to work out. Rather than wallow in regret or bitterness, I invited a few close friends over to celebrate friendship and independence. Aunt Fiona joined us, smiling knowingly as she watched me embrace a life I had never thought possible. As the night wore on and the guests left, I stood alone, gazing out at the city lights that illuminated Portland. The pain of betrayal still lingered like a fading scar, but it had also molded me into someone stronger, someone unafraid to stand up for my own worth. My parents tried to punish me by cutting me, out of their will, but in doing so, they had inadvertently given me the most precious gift of all, my freedom. In the end, their rejection turned out to be my greatest liberation. They left everything they owned to Jordan and Bianca, but in the process, they gave me the chance to finally choose for myself. What would you have done in my place? Would you have continued to support your family at the expense of your own happiness? Or would you have walked away, even if it meant losing them forever? I'd really like to know your thoughts.